Hi, everyone. Welcome to our next episode of Fiction in Real Life. My name is Heather B. Moore, and I am here with Jennifer Moore, Geigle Johnson, and Julie Daines. We're really excited to be here. We have a fun program. It's called Unexplained Phenomenon. If you watched last time, you know that we talk about interesting story ideas, and then we all vote on whether it would be something we would write a book about. Anyway, but first of all, let's just kind of go around and everyone can talk about maybe what they've been working on lately as far as writing or books go. Do you want to go first, Jennifer?
Yep. I'm not working on it right now, but I'm working on talking about it. So Where Dreams Meet is a story. I have a story in this collection with Carolyn Frank, Carly Kelly, and Renee Mackley. It's about they're American history short stories, and they're all romances. So that's what I'm excited about right now.
Cool. Awesome. That looks really cool. And then Julie, what about you?
So I'm just working on my final proof of Meriden Park. Here's an arc, and there's the cover that was just revealed like a few weeks ago. So I'm just really excited about this book, and I think it turns out pretty good.
Beautiful covers. Both of those books are beautiful. What about you, Jen?
Yeah, I agree. Gorgeous. I today just had a meeting to talk about ARCs, the advanced copies of my book, A Tenuous Betrothal. So that launches in August. And for those of you waiting or hoping for an advanced copy or a view copy of the book, they should be coming out in a few weeks. So I'm really excited about that.
Awesome. So as for me, I just had a book come out on Monday, a couple days ago. It's you probably have seen or heard about it. It's Hannah. It's biblical fiction. So I'm excited to hear back from our readers, see what they think, and hopefully they'll have a happy reading summer.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we have some really cool stories coming up. I'm trying to decide who to start with. Maybe we'll start with Julie because her story is a little bit scary, so I kind of want to get it over with.
So, as anyone knows who follows me even a little bit, I sort of love everything macabre and creepy. And that luckily has passed on to my lovely daughter, Marin. And a few years ago, she went to New Orleans on a trip with my husband. And they, went into this real voodoo shop. In fact, I can tell you right now, it's called Marie Laveau's House of Voodoo, right there on Bourbon Street. Anyway, she brought me back this voodoo doll. This voodoo doll right here. Anyway, I didn't think that much of it. I'm like, oh, super cool. It's this nice little thing. According to the tag, it's supposed to be for personal power and conquering your obstacles and intelligence and creative energy. And so I set it on my nightstand right next to my bed. And I didn't think that much about it. But then a couple days later, I was in the bathroom getting ready. I was blow drying my hair, and I heard someone literally right behind me say, "Mom." And I turn around because I heard it just like that, "Mom." I turn around and there's no one there. And the dog is sitting behind me staring at the empty space. So I'm like, okay, that's freaky. Maybe the blow dryer made a weird sound. Maybe I didn't hear it right, whatever, moving on with life. Then a couple days later, again, I'm in the bathroom getting ready. The blow dryer's not on this time. And I hear from right outside my bathroom door, "Hi, Mom." Just like that, just like normal. It didn't even cross my mind that it could be something weird other than my daughter who had gotten up and laid down on my bed, which she used to do a lot. And so I leaned back to see her laying on my bed there, and there was no one there. And I was like, oh, she probably just came and said, "Hi, Mom," and left. And then I was like, but did she? And so I went and I looked, and she was sound asleep in her bed, sound asleep. And I'm like, okay, this is super creepy now. So I posted it on Facebook, and I have this friend who is the coolest person. She plays the bagpipes. She teaches the bagpipes. She's learning Arabic, and she is like one of those ghost hunter people. She's like, don't talk to the voodoo doll. I'm afraid to put it on the screen, really. Don't talk to the voodoo doll. Put it away. Throw it away if you can. Put it in a drawer. Don't ever look at it. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. So I did that, and I didn't have any problems. But then I am not kidding. This morning when I got the voodoo doll out to get ready for this broadcast, I was again in the bathroom. Maybe there's just something haunting my bathroom. The lights were seriously flickering, and I don't have that problem ever. Anyway, that is my story of the unexplained phenomenon of the voodoo doll.
So the question is, Julie, do I even need to ask you is, would you book it or not book it into a story?
So if I could, I would book it because I love stuff like this. I love creepy things, and I don't know. I just love creepy, unexplained stuff because I'm a very faithful, Christian person for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But I just really love this interesting element of what is really real, what is really, I don't know. It's just super interesting to me. And I don't know. So I would book it.
What about you, Jen? Would you book it or not?
Oh, well, to know Julie is to love her. And I'm not at all surprised that she owns a voodoo doll. Like, really. And I'm not surprised she has this story to tell. I'm totally freaked out about your story. And I literally am going to I don't know what we do. Rosemary, whatever we do. Anti-voodoo vibe.
I did get some sage to burn.
Oh, that's good.
At this haunted store in a ghost town in Montana.
Because of course you went there. But okay, so back to the topic. I could never book it. I would just, in order to write this kind of story, you have to be in the story. And I just couldn't in that story. Yeah, someone's like, burn it. I agree with whoever just
said our listeners are definitely very passionate about what you should do with the doll.
So I didn't bring my sign with me. Sorry, I'm actually at the church because I think the voodoo doll ruined my internet because here I am.
Well, Jen is at the church to balance it out.
At the church in a very holy place to save myself. But no, could never book it. I just can't. I can't do it. But I do respect Julie, and I love that she's into this kind of stuff because it's a cool part of her personality.
I mean, I'm not saying I'm a huge believer in things like voodoo magic. I'm just saying, since we had the doll, weird things happened. When I put it away, it stopped. That's all I'm saying.
What about you, Jennifer?
I would book it. I love creepy stuff. I would love to put that in a story. And also it would be a really convenient plot twister. Like if I needed something to happen, the magical doll could be the reason that something happened. I love that idea. And I think it also did something with my computer. I cannot see you guys. So am I even looking the right direction?
I can see you.
That creepy doll messed with all of our electronics.
I probably would not book it. But I've read a lot of suspense. I've read a lot of horror. I've read a lot of supernatural stuff. So it's not necessarily the idea of it, but I just feel like doing the research to write it, I would get too scared. I get too scared. I don't read scary stuff at night. If there's a scary show on, I won't watch it at night. So anyway. All right. So our next story is from Jen, Geigle Johnson. So go for it.
Okay. So my story is about George Washington. There he is on Mount Rushmore. That's a cool picture. Good job. Okay. So there's a lot, of course, we know there's a lot of urban legend about him, right? But I had to look up and make sure I was going to tell one of the true stories about George Washington. And he is called the man who could not be shot. There are just so many times where he was very, very brave also. When he'd go into battle, he was on the front lines a lot of times, and he would lead out the men. And sometimes he was within 30 yards of musket fire. And there was a particular battle in the Indian-American War, I think they call it, French-Indian War. And so early 1855. And he was one of the head generals or whatever his title was at the time, and rode right close to the Indian line. And the person in charge was still of the British mindset. They walked in infantry lines and their red coats and everything. So they were very visible. George Washington was ahead of them, leading everybody, and they all turned their target to him, and musket fired onto George Washington, and he lost 2 horses underneath him, and he still kept, and he got new horses, kept going, and none of the bullets hit him, and everybody thought they had killed George Washington. Like, they were sure of it. He was that close. And turns out he lived, survived, and when he took off his coat that day, he had 4 musket holes in his actual jacket. And this is found in multiple sources, including Mount Vernon's website. So it's kind of well documented. And one of the men who had shot at him had fired 17 rounds directly at George Washington, wanted to go see the man who would not die. And he was convinced that this man was protected by something divine, because there's no way he was still alive. And I just found this story, one of those things, is like an unexplained phenomena in history. Now, of course, we can think of all kinds of reasons why George Washington needed to live in 1855, because pretty soon he had a lot of stuff on his shoulders. But he's the guy who lived through all of that and the Revolutionary War. And I don't know, I could say many more things, but I don't even know if you know this, but he had dysentery the whole time through that whole war. So he was like super sick, all the different diseases that usually killed people during that time, including smallpox. But he lived through all of it, plus being shot at 1 million times. And
Good thing he wasn't on the Oregon Trail.
Yeah, right.
I'm sorry.
So yes. So anyway, what's really cool about that is what one of our Facebook commenters just said. I'm sorry, I can't see your name. He was definitely protected by God. And I feel like that, we call it unexplained phenomenon, but so many of these phenomenons are divine intervention. And this one I feel like likely was. And anyway, I just thought it was a super cool story. So that's my George Washington story.
No, I love it. I mean, I have, I've read some stuff on George Washington, obviously, like any, student in school, but I think I would love to read more. So go back to, as an adult, because you appreciate that kind of thing a lot more. So I'm going to go first because I would book it. I don't know how I would tell the story, but I think anything that centers around some of our founding fathers would be definitely fascinating. Something I'd like to learn more about and maybe write about. What about you, Jen?
I have to correct. Someone corrected my date. She's so right. I said 1855. It was 1755.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, sorry, guys. True. I mean, yeah, misspoke. But anyway, yeah, I would book it. I'm fascinated by the era. I actually am currently researching women during the time period of George Washington because I feel like we don't talk enough about them. And so I could squeeze in George Washington's story in there too, because super cool. I love it.
Yeah. What about you, Julie?
I would have to not book it because, so if I wanted to book it, I would take the stories and then I would retell them about someone else because I'm a little scared to touch on actual history in very depth depth because I swear you get one tiny thing wrong and it's like grab the torch and pitchforks, we're going out for a lynching.
Yeah.
So I'm a little bit afraid to get too in depth with like actual real people that are beloved by so many people. Anyway, but the stories are great and the stories would make a good addition, but with somebody else, not George Washington.
I'm with you.
What about you, Jennifer?
I would book it, and this is kind of a weird thing, is I would do it kind of the opposite way of Julie. I would rather write about George Washington and not about the almost dying, because I feel like a character that can't be killed has no stakes. And so, I mean, it's never a risk. He just goes into battle again. Okay, he just came home. There's nothing at risk, I guess. And I love George Washington. And George Washington is in in More Dreams Meet. Yeah.
That was good timing to bring him up then. I'm so
Wasn't
happy.
it?
Yeah.
I can drop a little ad for myself.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Well, our next story is shared by Jennifer. It's actually one that was submitted to us. And so you can go ahead and take it away.
Okay. This was submitted by a person named Ken, and he and his wife, Linda, had a little baby, a 20-month-old baby named Philip. And Philip was their only child at the time. And one day he's just playing, and the baby turns pale and just collapsed, and they tried to revive him and they can't. He's just limp. And Ken said in his letter that in their country at the time, there was no emergency call. They didn't have 911 or 999 or whatever you call. They didn't have that. And he said we could have called the hospital, but then all we have to do is wait for someone from the hospital to get here. And there was just no time. We didn't know what to do. He said that his wife, Linda, grabbed their baby and just started running through the backyard. And he's like, oh, that's brilliant. She's running to the neighbor's house, and the neighbor's a nurse. But then he's, just all these weird thoughts that kind of go through your head in a panic situation. He's like, well, but she can't get through that way because they had a fence. And it was one of those fences that has tall poles, and they're set apart, and there's like top wire between them. So you can't get through the wire, I guess, unless you kind of, I don't know, but you couldn't get through. And he said his wife with that baby just hauled through the fence, and he watched her, and he said it looked like the fence kind of bent down, and she just like went over the wires, got to the nurse's house, and the nurse helped revive the baby and take his fever down. He had a seizure from a fever. And so they got the baby to the hospital, and the baby turned out to be just fine. And so he and Linda both went out and looked at that fence and tried to figure out how she could get over it. And he, ran against it and tried to climb it. And he, they got like a cloth and wrapped it up and pretended like they were carrying it, and they could not do it. They couldn't figure out how she got through the fence that day. So anyway, that's a cool story.
That is really cool. So what would you do, Jennifer? Would you book that story?
I don't think I would book it. It kind of feels a teeny bit, I don't really write religious things, and it feels a little bit kind of like a miracle, kind of a sacred thing. And also it's kind of unbelievable too. So I think I wouldn't book it.
What about you, Julie?
I think I might be the same way for almost the same reasons, because it's a beautiful story. And I'm not saying I don't believe it, for sure. I do believe it. It does feel very kind of almost like a sacred miracle that happened to that family to save the baby. And it is one of those things where real life is stranger than fiction. And so even though it really happened to them, if you put it in a book, again, a reviewer, someone already, condoned my reviewer issues, people are going to say, oh, that's so unbelievable. That could never happen. The book was great, but then there was this one part that was like so far-fetched. So even though it did really happen to these people and it was a beautiful experience for them, if I put it in a book, in the types of book that I write, it would not come across as a believable situation.
Yeah, that makes sense. What about you, Jen?
Now I'm conflicted. So hard having author friends, you guys. Well, I don't think I would book it, but I'm feeling a sense of challenge arise within me. So I feel like I like you saying that makes me want to try to do it in a way that would come across as like so believable and real and powerful.
Like if the world had magic or something, then it's more believable.
Or if I was trying to prove faith promoting stories or whatever.
Yeah.
But true, in a Regency romance, there isn't a real place for that story. However, I'm feeling a sense of challenge, but I'm going to resist because I already have to write 3 other books in the near future. So I'm going to not book it right now.
So I don't want to say I wouldn't book it. I'd say that it has booking potential, just because I could see it being an article, an inspirational publication, maybe Chicken Soup for the Soul, or even an anthology where you have several kind of miracle stories in there. And you definitely have a specific audience. So, but I think it's definitely a story that can be shared and can inspire. And we probably all have those stories in our background. Go ahead.
I would book it into like a Relief Society lesson.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, like sharing something more of a personal side. Yeah. So I don't know. This has been fun though. I just want to remind everybody that we would love to hear any stories that you have, and you can submit to us. There's a ticker at the bottom. It's fictionirlauthors@gmail.com. And I think Ken's story was one of the first ones submitted. So be patient if you submitted. Be patient. We'll get to it. We try to just kind of combine the ideas so that we can create a full episode out of it. So it might take a little bit longer. But we do have a lot of times people will say, hey, I missed your live show. How can I see it? Well, it will be showed. It turns into a permanent video on all of our author pages on Facebook, but you can also subscribe to the YouTube channel, which is obviously Fiction IRL. And then that way you'll get that alert from YouTube as well, that we're going live or that you have a new video to watch. So you won't ever have to miss an episode. But anyway, thanks everyone. We'd love to hear your ideas, anything from fun stuff to scary stuff to miracle stuff to anything that just was strange that happened to you or to someone you know too. Those are fine to share as well. So thanks everyone, and we hope that you enjoyed
Fiction
In
Real
Life.
we nailed it.
See you later, everybody. Thanks.
Bye.